Hello, I'm Christina Cote, and for those who don't already know me, I'm a Title I Education Programs Professional with the Nevada Department of Education. Today, I will be presenting to you the recent Federal Consolidated Application ePAGE system design changes that will launch in the upcoming 2019-20 school year. This short module will be focused on specific enhancements around districts who serve private schools. We will be reviewing the changes around the new non-public school sections for applicable grants that provide equitable services through consultation. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the module learning objectives. By the end of this training module, you should be able to identify and navigate the new feature changes to the following Consolidated Application ePAGE enhancements: the updated non-public school grant section, and the new non-public school summary page. This module will follow a general format. First, I'll summarize the system interface changes for each of the enhancements listed through this presentation. Then, I will pull up an ePAGE testing environment to show you what the new pages look like live. Let's get started. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that the design for these pages was a collaborative effort. Our state ombudsman and representing districts focused specific needs for the desired version 1 design. Some of these design elements were implemented to address data needs both at the state and national level. Here's a visual of the design structure to how the non-public pages were put together. As you can see on the second row, all the different grant applications are listed, and each grant has its own individual non-public page detail page or section. The data from each of these individual grants actually will now flow into a brand new non-public page, or what we call this data summary page. This data summary page is just a readable page. It's not an editable page, and will serve as an important summarization of the individual grants for our state ombudsman when she reports out to at the national level. But what if your district doesn't support equitable services? It's just a simple checkbox. Let's take a look. If your district does not serve non-private schools, for each application you will need to select the Not Applicable box in order to successfully submit the consolidated application. As you can see here, for each of the different grants, Title 1A, Title 2A, Title 3, and Title 4A, you'll see at the top of that page, there'll be a non-applicable checkbox. You should only check this box only if no school children that are served by that grant are presently residing in participating school attendance areas enrolled in non-public schools, or if non-public schools are denying services as equitable services. But what if your district has one or more grants that support equitable services for non-public schools as identified through the consultation process? Let's take a look at that. So here are some of the highlights of the design enhancements across all title programs that support private schools. A consistent and strategic design approach was put together. Previously, individual applications had very different non-private school pages, as you can see here. Here's an example of a Title I non-public school service page versus what the Title 2A looked like, and you can see that they have very different designs. So the problem was we had inconsistent non-public school page sections, and we wanted to streamline those to make them more comparable. With the new design, each non-public school application section now has 4 key elements. The first element is a section for non-participating schools. The second is for capturing data for participating non-public schools. Then there's a section to determine the equitable share calculation, as well as how to track pooled funding sections, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The district officials, in consultation with private school officials, may pool funds for instruction in private schools or groups of private schools, such as schools of one religious denomination. The pooled funds are used to serve those private school students that are most at risk, as determined in consultation, who reside in participating public school attendance areas. The previous non-public school sections of each application did include a way to track these pooled schools or those funds. So in consultation with some districts, our ombudsman and the Department of Ed improved this section to be able to capture those pooled funds, and so that the state can better understand both whom is pooled as well as the amount of allocations assigned by the pool for each grant. I'll show you that in a live demonstration at the end of this presentation. Another enhancement for improvement was identified during our design process. We reached out to a couple of our largest districts, Clark County School District and Washoe County School District, for both review and input because they serve the most private schools in our state. These two districts requested that part of the design enhancements was to provide better clarification on how certain cells were calculated on the back end by the ePAGE system. So previously, non-editable fields would include descriptions that were pretty vague or did not necessarily explain how the cell was calculated. As you can see in this example, it says data entry currency is kind of the default. However, with the new and improved design, we have hover text that provides better context and some sort of training or system training on how the read-only cell was calculated. So in this example, you can see the indirect cost portion of total field. This is in the Title I Part A non-public private school page. It actually gives a little bit more of an equation. It says total funding minus total funding divided by 1 plus indirect costs. It gives a little bit more training and better understanding for users to how those fields were calculated on the back end. The Title I-A private school page also includes 2 text fields for LEAs to engage in an MOU with another district or who provide services to eligible students, as well as for an area for districts to identify third-party contracts for supporting non-public schools served. This area is similar to what the department has historically requested from districts to respond to in our desktop eNote monitoring tool. If the LEA has an inter-district agreement with another LEA to provide services, you would enter in the top section the name of the district that your district has an agreement with. Alternatively, or in addition to, if your district leverages the services of third-party contracts to support served non-public schools, you would need to identify the vendor in the second section. If one or more of these situations don't apply to your district, you would check the not applicable checkbox for each appropriate section. The new non-public service summary section is auto-populated by data, that's included in the individual non-public school pages of each application, as I summarized at the beginning of this presentation. The summary page provides districts and the NDE with a summary of private school student counts, as well as the allocation information per school and by pool if applicable. Let's now take a quick peek at these new features in the live environment. Once the federal consolidated application has been pushed into the production site, you too can use this module as a helpful guide to help navigate to the enhancements we'll be demonstrating here. So I'm going to change my view over to the live environment. As you can see here in our testing environment, we have some of our new enhancements for our FY20 or 2019-20 school year application for Consolidated. Each appropriate federal grant who serves equitable services now has a brand new section entitled Non-Public School Service. So you can see here's one for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. Additionally, that summary page that I mentioned earlier, there's a new non-public service summary section, excuse me, it's a read-only section at the bottom of the Consolidated app. So I'm going to use the Title I-A section for most of my examples. So I'm going to click on the non-public school service section. And you can see the different elements, the main components that I had mentioned before. If your district, as I mentioned earlier, is not using, does not serve non-public schools, or has non-public schools that are not going to, through the consultation process, use a particular grant, you would click the not applicable. Actually, I should say, if your district does not serve non-public schools, you're going to click the not applicable box. If your district has private schools that they would serve, but through the consultation process, it's determined that that school does not want to take services, you would choose the non-participating private school section. So the way that you would include the schools is you would click Add a Row. As you can see, I've already identified Bishop Manogan Church Academy from Washoe as either non-participating or non-responsive. But let me just show you really quickly how this works. Click the Add the Row, and it's thinking. Let's try that again. There we go. Nope. A little buggy because we're in the testing environment. There we go. And the field will open up, and there will be a drop-down menu where you can select from the particular schools that are available in the drop-down list. So I'm just going to choose a school. I'm not sure which ones are in Washoe, but I'm going to choose this Bethlehem Lutheran School right here. And I don't believe this is in Washoe, but I'm not positive. And then at the status section over here on the right, I'm going to choose the appropriate drop-down, either as non-participating through the consultative process or non-responsive. So we're going to say that they are non-participating. And then I would continue adding rows for each applicable school, public school in that district. Now, let's say you do have, through the consultation process, a school that does want to leverage their equitable services. I would select the school, again, in a similar manner, the Add a Row selection, and choose a school. I'm going to choose Brilliant Child Christian Academy. Now, there's this new pooling section that I mentioned. Now, remember, pooling would be for some schools that might pool their funding together. So this might, if you have multiple schools that are served perhaps by the Catholic system, they may choose to pool their funding amongst all the Catholic schools that are in that district. So that's an example. As you can see, Little Flower and St. Albert the Great that I've already put together, I selected them as using pool 1. And you could just choose whatever number. You just want to make sure the pools are separate, pool 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you have a school that is not part of the pool, you would just select none. So we're going to pretend Brilliant Child Christian Academy is going to be part of, let's say, pool 2. And the next field is the number of low-income students. If you're in an application like Title III, it would be the number of EL students that are identified, and so on. So for my low-income, my FRL students, I'm going to put that there's only 2 in this field for Brilliant Christian. And as I click off of the box and add another row or move on, it will adjust it should adjust the funding here. In a second here, let's try it. There it goes. It took a little bit of a delay there, and of course this is, we don't have a budget in our Title I submitted. This is just raw data, so probably the school wouldn't get that much money, but it kind of shows you that it will adjust the allocation based on the equitable service calculation. And I would continue to add schools appropriately, either choosing schools that are participating from the drop down and determining the pool, if it isn't a pool, or selecting none accordingly. So we're going to make abundant as part of pool 2. I'm going to say there's 4 students on here. And click off the box. And in the second here, it should adjust. Anything that is grayed out on these pages is calculated in the background of the system appropriately. And so you can see the total allocation, the average PPA for private and public schools. Remember the hover text you can see as an example here. It kind of explains what that hover, how that field is calculated. Indirect cost rate would be determined once that's loaded. So right now it doesn't have anything, but it kind of gives you an example of how these funding sources are all calculated. The equitable share calculation, that will be populated once the district, all the information is submitted into the application. Again, these are all non-editable fields, so it's done by a calculation in the background. As well as this pooled funding summary. It takes the data from the participating private school and automatically calculates these fields based on, as you can see, pool 1, it's added 76 total low income students, and that would be the sum of the two pooled ones data numbers that we put in for low income students, so 41 plus 35. Same with the amount of allocation. So the allocations for both of the schools are added together and combined into the total allocation field here. And that would go for each of the pools that are identified by the district. As I mentioned earlier, the Title I application also identifies 2 fields for districts that are entering into an inter-district agreement with another district. We do have some districts that partner that way, as well as if the district is entering services, a third-party contract, a vendor to provide services. So if it's not applicable, for either of these are not applicable, you would just choose the not applicable section and it will gray it out. So I'm going to pretend I'm a district that does not have an inter-district agreement or MOU with another district and click not applicable. But for the second section, I'm going to pretend I'm a district that does have a contract with a third-party vendor. And if that's the case, you're going to enter the name of the vendor and the field and any other additional information, and as well as perhaps request a copy of the contract and the related documents and or district document upload, district resources upload, a part of ePAGE. So this is an example. When I'm done with my information, I'm just going to save by going to another section. And that should save your data. Now, let me explain a little bit about, I'm going to go into Title IIA, eligible non-public service example. So again, you can see I've entered some information here. There's this carryover field here that will be entered after the FFR process of the following year. Districts should generally be able to obligate the funds set aside to provide equitable services to participating non-public schools in the year in which their funds are appropriate. However, we understand that extenuated circumstances may occur that may inhibit the district from obligating the funds within the intended time frame. So when this occurs, the district should consult again, just like in the normal process, with the appropriate non-public school officials regarding the option to carry over those funds. In the event that the non-public school elects to carry over funds in a given year, the funds that will be carried over categorically should support the equitable services to be provided to those private schools as determined through the consultation. So during the FFR year, after the FFR, and the district determines the equitable services carryover, you would enter that information in this field here, and then a carryover approved box would be selected. And then that would adjust the total funding based on the amounts. Okay, so that will come a little bit later, but we do have that design available for districts to incorporate after the FFR process. All right. One other quick note is the Title IIA, Title III, and Title IV non-public school sections look very similar. As you notice here, they don't have the MOU or the inter-district agreement boxes at the bottom. The number of students would have to be entered by the district here based on the students that are served, and then the calculation will be determined from that data entry. So these pages are all very similarly designed. Let's take a look at that summary page that I mentioned before. Once all the different individual program non-private school data pages have been completed by the district, as a read-only summary option, districts can look at the non-public service summary section at the very bottom of the consolidated app and see what that looks like. So as you can see, whatever data is included in those individual pages, it will be rolled up to the summary page. All non-participating schools will be identified at the top, a list of the participating schools, as well as particular data as it relates to that school, as well as the funding sources per each grant. You can kind of see it just summarizes whatever data that I've inserted or that the district will serve. Additionally, pools will be identified. So if you're doing an application, you'll have to consult with, if you're a bigger district, like a Title 1A or a Clark County or Washoe County School District, you'll have to make sure you're consulting with the other grants to make sure that the schools identified for pools have the same meta tag, the same pool number, so that you're not having certain schools in one pool and certain schools in another. In other words, if I have 2 schools targeted for a pool in Title I and the same 2 schools are going to receive Title IIA services, you'd want to use the same pool number, like Pool 1, so that shows the full funding sources of all those grants into that for that particular pool. Each pool will identify here Title I pools, Title IIA pools, Title III, and I wanted to caution that there is a second page up here. As you can see, you can't see Title 4A, but you can see it's page 1 and 2 up here. There is a second page for Title 4A. And that's how the pools work and the summary in the non-public service summary page. All right. Well, that's the end of Module 2. Hopefully you've achieved the module objectives that I've outlined at the beginning. You should now be able to identify and navigate the updated non-public school grant section and identify and navigate the new non-public school summary page, which is a read-only. Thank you for reviewing the self-paced module. We have created other short training modules around the Consolidated Application ePAGE changes that you also can review if applicable. If you have any other further questions with regards to the new enhancements, please reach out to our state's private school ombudsman, educational programs professional, or grants analyst assigned to your district based on the applicable federal grant. Thank you so much and hope you have a fantastic day.